Well, I got to start this podcast with a gratitude, and I'm taking a cue from my first podcast, where I was reminded that making sure we say thank you and deep thank yous to people that help us with, our thinking and help move us along in our projects, and sometimes just kind of give you that hand up to pull you up to that next level. So I got to throw out deep thanks to Derek Rhodenizer for allowing me to jump onto his podcast, Edu-Thoughts, and not only that, being open and willing to kind of collaborate a little bit, and as much as you can in podcasts, because my question to him was, hey, you know what, if you're sort of bringing a little bit of conversation from your side, can I bring a little conversation from my side, and maybe you could share the audio with me, and we can cross-post, and he was totally into it. So what was phenomenal about this conversation that we had is that we bounced back and forth the ideas about the future of education and what could possibly be new forms of personalized learning for teachers and students. And I felt like somewhere in the sweet spots of the conversation, we both managed to find our place. It was a pretty remarkable conversation. The Chasing Squirrels podcast is always trying to find out and explore what some of the changes are in education. And those changes can happen to both workers inside and outside the box. This episode is no different. I really thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Derek, and I hope you do too.
All right, Chris, I pressed record. Welcome. Hello. How's it going?
It's going well. You?
Oh, I'm doing all right. We had a little chat there off mic for a few minutes, and we got to get this thing on the road. And let me frame what we're trying to do here. You ready?
I'm ready. Throw it down.
Okay. So, 8 months ago, I started a podcast calling it Edu-Thoughts. I made a word up. And actually, you know what? I made this word up. I swear I made it up on my own volition. And then I looked it up, and other people are using it. Ugh. The domain's already owned. It's very frustrating. But not using it a lot. And the domain's owned and no one's on it.
You know what? By volume, you can always push out interest too, right? Post positive, it's going to start showing up with all your content either way.
Yeah, there you go. So I started this, and over this little journey, I've got a chance to get a hold of a few different podcasters. Then discovered there's very few Canadian podcasters. Mm-hmm. Ed Roland was on his podcast, mm-hmm. and now I met you, and you're one episode in, right?
I am.
This is fantastic. And so Chris and I are going to converse together and then frame this thing separately and do two birds, one stone, right?
Yep, for sure. I'm totally going to put like a robot voice on you and like sound zipping cars in the background. GarageBand is awesome for that.
Yeah, you got some really cool post going on your podcast. Mine's bare.
You know what? It's me messing with loops. That's it. I made a song for you.
You made a song for what? Sorry.
I made a song for you. That's the sort of like the back thing that I'm doing for each of my episodes. I'm just teaching myself GarageBand. I'm just messing with the stuff, and I'm creating a song. I'll send you the MP3, but it's going to be sort of like the lead-in song. And it's funny because my spouse came down, and she's like, "You're making another song?" I'm like, "Gonna do another conversation." She's like, "You're gonna do one for everyone?" I'm like, I think I will, because it's fun, man.
That's good. I mean, I just been ripping off open source old school funk beats that I enjoy.
Oh, dude, I found one that's hilarious. It's called Big Bird's Date Night. It's the best little funky tune. I was going to use it, and I thought, I actually felt like, because I made one for Jen Giffen. I have one in the, like, locked up for Roland, but I'm long gaming that one. I don't think I'm going to talk to him for a little bit, and it's nothing,
you guys know each other? Did you know each other previously?
Roland and I connected online, and then we met. I called it a blind date at it was a regional exchange for Canadian Education Association, and it was just on the email list that I saw his name there, and it was like we go to these conferences and you sort of hope that you're going to connect well, and you hope that, it's something besides the catering is going to be good. You're going to be inspired. You're going to sort of like network, take some names. And I saw his name on there and I thought that's cool, because I really, really appreciated his online presence, and I felt in line with a lot of the stuff that he was mentioning and sharing and creating. And I met him, and it worked out well. So we've only met once met once in real time.
Okay.
But yeah, we've connected online.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Excellent. So I kind of want to talk to you like a little bit, but a bunch of things. But one thing I want to talk to you about is why you're doing the podcast thing, because I feel like we're kind of aligned with that. So
yeah.
Why are you podcasting?
So I started this year in a brand new portfolio. So just quick backstory. In my 11th year of teaching, and I've gone through several different iterations of myself. So when I first got hired on, I was teaching. I'm a chef prior to becoming a teacher, and so I was lucky enough to get hired on to teach hospitality. So teaching secondary level, grade 11, teaching foods. So basically, here's your primer for getting a job in the hospitality business. So,
I taught that course, but I am not a chef.
It's a great course, eh? So that
it's a great course.
And like I said, so if you just dig the content, it's a great course to teach. I mean, if you're handed content that is completely in line with what your previous career was, like, how can that not be your best first day teaching ever? And I had it was a really nice on-ramp to teaching to be able to do that. So I went from there into guidance, and then from guidance I went into spec ed, and then from spec ed I went into something called alt ed, or personalized alternative education. Okay. And my current portfolio kind of comes out of that a little bit. It's a program called Access, and I work with students that have been expelled or suspended. So that's the quick bio. So when I arrived in this place, there's 4 sites in our board, and each Access in itself is its own school, even though our particular site is on school property. We're our own school. And in working with students that have been expelled and suspended, I had a lot of questions around programming, a ton. And I had so much feedback loop on myself as far as, am I on the right track? Do I use old tools? Do I need to seek out new tools? What resources do I need? Like, I just had so many questions rattling around in my brain. I needed a way to tie it together. I needed a way to kind of capture it. And I've only realized in the last couple of years that if I don't see it outside my head, or hear it outside my head, then I lose it really quickly. It kind of just floats on down the river, and right. I don't get back to that thought easily. So I've started to write a lot more, started to reflect a lot more, and I started blogging. And with the blog, I started to do vlogging, so little short video clips. So I put about 11 of those together, 10 or 11, and it was sort of, post-conference or post-interesting day, or just walking home from work, something that caught my attention, conversation that I needed to capture. And from that, it was kind of just coming out of that and being on YouTube and sort of listening, including audio in my reflection, not just typing it out and rereading it, which takes a long time.
Yes.
You need to be able to sit and stay. I think I wanted something that was more in the moment. I could sort of be more present. If I had a thought, I could just rip it, drop it, upload it, and share it. And I think podcasting fell somewhere between that cool developing the story sitting in front of your keyboard and finding a story by having a conversation. So here's where I've landed.
Well, it took me a while to settle into where I like it, but I've now got 2 streams on the podcast, and that's working out really well for me. So I've got this method, which is a conversation with someone, 45 minutes ish, yep, depending on everything, somewhere between half an hour and an hour. And then another, I'm doing these 5-minute things I'm calling edu slams.
Yeah.
And that is like sort of my quick blog, and it feels that way where like I gotta get this idea out, I gotta hammer this thought out, like I need to get my ideas out on it. And I find it's a lot easier to get into like flow or get into like the real sort of kernel of what you're thinking, for me anyway, when I can just sort of throw it out quick and speak it instead of worrying about sentence structure and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I like the, I think that's, and I wrestled with whether or not, like I have them sitting there still on YouTube, and I have it sort of, I guess, available tag back to my blog, and I thought, yeah, should I flip the audio? Should I flip the audio into, into the podcast and have it as sort of extras in there, and I'll start building kind of content there. And I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to keep them because I really like, and I hear what you're saying about the edu slams. Like, it's like you get on fire and you got to get that idea out of your head. You don't necessarily want to bounce it off anybody. It's just pinging off in your head.
Yeah.
And you want to capture it. And I think I totally hear you. I think it's great to have the two streams. I think it allows people to sort of think.
Well, I like calling it that because I didn't want to be preachy. Like, it's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to put my opinions on somebody else. But you sort of said you need to get it out, and that's how I feel too. I just need to get it out. Like, once I've spoken it with somebody, and it's different than just thinking in your head. Right? Like, when you've said it out and you've shared it, even if nobody else engages, you've put it out there, and it's something about that really adds to the process.
Yeah, I kind of, I'm sure someone's written some developmental kind of journey paper thesis on the benefits of podcasting versus private journaling, kind of a thing. Like, that's sort of like the balance between. For me, it's as someone else in some podcast somewhere was saying, the amount of time it takes to kind of develop maybe it was you. Someone was, so you started to get kind of kaleidoscopic in your knowledge, eh? I just steal it and claim it. I'll end up saying in the podcast, and like, yeah, Clough totally said that. He said this, and it was somebody else. But anyone could quote me, and I don't give a damn. Like, take it. I give it away for free, anyways. But I think that's the spirit that I'm going into this. Had a really interesting conversation with a colleague where, in my teaching practice, so alt ed, it is not a curriculum based program. It is a support program. It's in some ways, I'm a teacher. Period. That's it. I'm a teacher. I mean, I have a lot of other resources and tools and tricks and sort of like loot bags associated with that. But a student could come to me, and then I'm going to be your grade 11 business teacher, or I'm going to be your grade 9 academic English teacher. Like, my ability to teach is entirely dependent on the relationships that I make with other teachers to get their content. It just so happens I'm working with this kid right now. So I've kind of really gotten used to the open source. Can I have it for free? I'm going to give it back to you in a different version if you want that extra copy. I'm going to tweak it, and I'm going to send it back out there. I'm going to flip it right away and give it back out there. And I think that's in my heart with this whole podcasting thing, and even blogging, and that it's can I post positive and put my thoughts out there in a way that, if my kids, my own children, 50 years from now, if they find it, they're like, wow, cool, that's what Dad was working on. Or if a parent comes across and like, you know what, I was wondering what Clough thought about that moment. Or, even my colleagues where they say, he just keeps coming up with this stuff. Like, it's just existing. You said it, I said it, outside my own head, and trying to reach outside my classroom. So...
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece. Like, we can't be insular, right? I was getting Roland to bring up again, but him and I got into a little conversation about school not being real. Mm-hmm. It's not the real world, and I can understand that at times it's not, but I feel like it should be. Like, it should be part of the real world. It should be authentic, real learning that makes a lot of sense outside. Like, I don't like this idea that if you walk into a school, you've walked into a separate bubble, mm-hmm. where like reality no longer exists and it's this other place, and then you step out into the real world. Like, I don't understand that. I don't get why you would want that as a goal. And I think a big way to avoid that is not being insulated, right? Talking to your colleagues in your building, talking to your colleagues in your board. And I'm in an independent school, and I was talking to Peter Cameron yesterday. He's in North Bay, and sort of hilariously we feel similarly, because he feels isolated by geography, and I feel isolated by sort of the type of school. Mm-hmm. And both of us feel like that's the catalyst of why we've been connected and how it's been helpful. Mm-hmm. But I think that everybody really needs to figure out what it is that works for them. And I'm going to tag on to something you said earlier where you talked about this river of knowledge. So when I first joined Twitter, I started. It actually was a little bit frustrating at first that you don't know anybody, you don't know how to speak the language, you don't have any followers, or no one's on your in your PLN really. And then eventually it starts to work and you get excited, right? So I got excited, and then I would try to bring in my colleagues, and I found this video that I was playing for people, and it was explaining Twitter like this river. And it's this river of ideas, and ideas flow by, and you catch the ones you like, and off you go. And so I've been a huge Twitter proponent for years, but lately I've been really noticing it as the river. So like it's great, but these ideas, they sort of fly by, and sometimes you miss them, and then even if you do catch them, it's really hard to delve into something in 140 characters. And I actually had a pretty decent conversation. I don't know if you caught it. You did. I think you tweeted on it. I started a random hashtag this morning called "What is failure?" Because the conversation started to go that way, and it felt like it needed a hashtag. And so I went off, and we ended up getting sort of 12 or 15 people on it and chatting, and that was pretty good. But even then, that's kind of the extent of it. Like, it's hard to get deep, and that's the reason that I brought the podcast in. So Wesley Fryer said to me that you need a knowledge trap. So all this knowledge is floating by on, say, Twitter or whatever else you're using, but you need a trap. And if that's blogging for you, or if that's podcasting for me, or whatever that is, that's where you get a chance to do that deep dive. Right? Just dig a bit deeper, figure out, spend some time, block off some serious time, an hour or whatever, and really sort of get into it. And that's the sort of thing that I'm finding here. And I've talked about it a lot on my podcast, so I feel like people listen to me a lot might be annoyed at this point, but I think that it's something that really needs to get out there. And with this EduSlam, I've been starting to invite people to do the same. Like, you don't have a podcast, that's fine, I get it. There's stuff to do. You gotta get a web page, you gotta maybe get a SoundCloud or Podbean or whatever, and then and there's processes involved, right? You're playing with GarageBand. There is some work on the back end. So I've been inviting people to just do a quick audio recording, say on their iPhone or whatever, and shoot it to me, and I'll frame it because I've already got the back end stuff all done, and kind of get that voice in. So I'm really trying to get, because I'm starting to get an audience, right? Most of my podcasts are, a couple hundred people are playing it. So trying to get those people to get engaged with us and try to make this bigger. And it's one of the reasons I'm excited to contact with you and Roland and any other Canadian podcaster I can get my hands on, and try to make a bit of a network of podcasters.
Yeah, I'm pushing that exact same, I guess, philosophy. The thing that I'm adding, like, I like the idea, I love the idea of more CanCon and sort of getting to that experience that feels just a little closer to home. The stuff that I've been connected with in the last, I guess, couple years-ish, I've only really been starting to take Twitter seriously. For me, it only started to fit, I think, in the last year or so. It's a lot of Americans. So, my go-tos are, the Alice Keeler and Casey Bell and these other sort of individuals that I know are stateside. They're not up here.
It's good content, but it's different. It's just different.
Well, and it's something that it's different, and it's the same. It's content, right? And you choose to engage, and you choose to connect, or you kind of go, yeah, okay, that's a repeat, and there's sort of double posts and all that kind of stuff. But where it really gets me is because of where I teach right now, and the space that I teach in, it's myself and a CYW, and
CYW is
child and youth worker. So
okay.
It's myself and a counselor in this space. Our classroom cap is 16, so that would be the maximum that our particular site would handle before students would be shifted around to one of the other sites. And it is very easy. It's very easy to believe that you've got it going on and that you've got it all locked down and everything is a-okay and you're doing exactly what, kind of what is expected, but what is also best for kids. And when I go looking for resources, I do it because I'm interested. I'm just a curious fella, but I'm also going looking for specific things to help my kids. God bless you. That stuff that'll help my kids sort of improve and regulate and connect, and everything that, for whatever reason, when the dice was rolled, I can do. Some of my students can't do that so well. So, if my space is small and my resources are only as big as my shelves, then I need to be able to look a couple degrees outside my door. I could go over to the local school right beside and sort of sit in on PD there. I could email someone and ask a question. But I'm finding that the fluidity of conversation doesn't exist in Ontario as easily as it does. Well, Canada is a little bit bigger, but definitely I can drop myself into a sat chat on Saturday morning and get a ton of ideas. A ton. Just for the taking. It's like, go, take it. And that breaks my soul. Where I come back to, that breaks my soul. It really, I don't know why. So you were talking about I totally, I get you. When you say that first little bit on Twitter, and like no one's listening. Like how do I craft a conversation here? Hello, and you're sort of knocking at the door and no one's responding. Yeah. I feel that exact same moment, but in a bigger sense when I go looking for Ontario content.
Yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. It really is. It really is a missing piece. So this is why I'm stoked that this is episode 2. So here you go. Yeah. I know of 3 people in Ontario doing this right now.
That's awesome.
Pretty stoked. Absolutely. All right. So before I go off on another tangent, do you want to take a turn?
Sure. I'm not sure who you were talking to when you were talking about some of the terms or words that are kind of bouncing around inside your head, and you want to get some clarity on it. I think that was partially what the Twitter conversation today spoke about. Like,
it was
that idea of failure.
Yeah. It was Roland, actually. So now 3 times he's popped up in this podcast. Yeah, it was him. I threw 5 words at him, and then from there I decided those could be my next 5 edu slams. So the first one was failure, and then I talked about it again with Peter Cameron yesterday, failure, and then he put out an image today, and that started the hashtag going.
Gotcha. So one of the things that so my current, so many fascinations, like so many things that I ask a lot of why questions, and I'm trying to get better at asking why so that I don't upset people, because I find even in my new portfolio, sometimes asking questions that were answered 2 or 3 years before I got there, and the answer is still echoing.
Right.
I arrive with new eyes. You sort of try and get the best of the new people that are in there, and I'll ask questions. And one of the spaces that I'm existing in right now is asking questions around the numbers that are a part of our education system, like the 40 hours of community service, the 30 hours, 30 credits to graduate, 6 university credits. Now, that's not where I was going to go with my question with you, but these are the kind of cages that I'm rattling right now, because I want to know what the context was leading up to that decision, so that I know what conversation to have in my mind to try and make these things better, more robust, more useful, more current, let's say. So here's one of those sort of ideas that I can't get out of my head, and I think you're the perfect individual to post it to. So in looking at something like podcasting, and let's sort of track about, let's say that it's that the blogging is the gateway drug, so to speak. You sort of decide to do podcasting, maybe you're doing vlogging, but you're sort of deciding to post your reflections openly online with some little bit of expectation that someone's going to follow. If we use that jargon, someone's going to follow, someone's going to interact, someone's going to reach out to you. Tell me what you think about this. Okay, so is it possible, do you think, that within our career time, within our careers, that we're going to see something like podcasting and blogging replace formal professional development?
Replace it?
Yeah. Or just, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I think it should really become part of the equation. So what I think is interesting about this is there is a pretty strong voice. So outside of those who are podcasting or using Twitter, let's take them out of the equation. I think with them out of the equation, there's still a strong voice amongst teachers to have professional development be personalized, be useful for them, the just-in-time style professional development. And I think this makes perfect sense, right? Like I could so I'm the academic director at my school, so I can sit in a closed room and set up a whole bunch of professional development that is good quality professional development, maybe even it's world class, let's just say, and I present it or experts present it or whatever. If I'm presenting it to teachers who are already experts in the field, or teachers who aren't at the point where they can even digest this information yet because they're too beginner, it's useless. Mm-hmm. Like, even if it's the best, it's not the best, right? Like, there's one of my hobbies on the side is jiu-jitsu, so I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a while, and there's this great quote from Helson Gracie that says, "The right move at the wrong time is the wrong move." Mm-hmm. And I believe that's the same thing right across the board, and it definitely plays in professional development. So, okay, so if we sort of agree to that, if we agree that we can't blanket professional development, then you have, like, there's kind of no other answer. The answer is you need to personalize it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how are you going to personalize it? Are you going to have 40 presenters for your 40 staff members and have 40 different sessions going? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So,
but it does.
It does if you frame it within this age of the internet.
Okay, cool.
Right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to be able to pay to bring in 40 people to sit in 40 rooms to talk to 40 individual people. It doesn't make any sense. Right. But if I set up the day so that each person had a chance to go out and find that expert in the field that they could speak to, whether it be in real time or whatever, then that makes a ton of sense and is completely doable within the technology that we have. Or, like, I've said it a bunch of times on this podcast, I love getting people in Ottawa to come into my studio, which, by the way, is my basement and 2 microphones and my laptop.
I love that, but you got to label it, right? You've anointed it. I love it.
Yeah, welcome to my studio. It's the Rhodenizer studio, and so I love having them in because it's nice because you're face to face. It's a better conversation. However, it is way harder to organize. Like, way harder to organize. You've got to, first of all, we got to find a time that works for both of us. You might need babysitting. You might need somebody else to organize your kids, whatever, if you have kids. And then you got to drive here, right? We're going to talk a bit beforehand. We're going to talk a bit afterhand. Like, we've cut into some time and figured out logistics to make it work. To do these online chats, they're super easy. Like, I found it, I've had sort of, quote, famous teachers on here with like 70,000 followers, way easier and way faster than some local educator friends of mine.
Right.
So with the internet, we can do this. Like, we can personalize it. So, however, there's a whole bunch of bumps in the road, like a ton of bumps in the road. So if I'm wearing an administrator's hat, how do I validate that? Right? If you are occasionally checking out Twitter chats on the evenings or weekends, or you're podcasting or this or that, like, how do I create a circumstance that I know what you're doing, and then I validate what you're doing? Like, the richness of that might be difficult to quantify. I'd like to think that we're a group of professionals. Teachers are professionals. If you have a professional designation, you're responsible to the College of Teachers. Like, you should give them maybe a little bit more freedom, and maybe something as simple as a professional development journal that's submitted every quarterly would be enough for an administrator to say, oh, look, they're doing this. And I could see that being a lot more rich than the sit and listen style professional development. So I think we could get there, but the hoops might be a bit tough. It's kind of like this no grading thing, right? Like, how do you jump through those hoops? I had Star Saxton on, and it was interesting. She's like, nope, I don't grade. But then when we dug into it, there are grades. Like, she's figured out a way to jump through these hoops. She has the students present their material, present their grade, and then defend their grade based on a whole set of information. So, like, it's actually it's a more robust grade than one person's opinion. It's almost like a committee.
Yeah. So
she is grading. That's how she's figuring out how to jump through this hoop. So I suspect that there will be a way to have personalized professional development become more dominant in what we do, And it's already starting, like you said, how annoying it is coming south of the border, but it's already starting in the States, where certain school boards in the States require a certain amount of time, professional development, and they're allowing people to count badges at that time. So if you can get like a Google certification, a Google Teacher Certified Level 1, 2, or whatever, then and you get a badge, and that badge could be counted against an amount of time of professional development. So that's a little superficial, but it is still individualized, and you could do that when you have the time to do that, which is my personal favorite thing about this, right? Like we were going to talk yesterday, and then I managed to completely mess up my shoulder, and I was getting some painkillers, and we just canceled it on the dime, and then we picked it up today, and it was fine, right? But that wouldn't have been the same if I was going to, a scheduled conference where there are thousands of people going. They weren't going to stop it for me.
Yeah, no, and I think there's a I'm not even sure if I'm using the word correct, but I think there's a correlation, something like that.
The correlation would be two things connected to each other.
Okay, so I loved what you said about the accreditation and looking at badges as, part of your training, and as clear and as, let's say, dense as your teacher training, whatever it might be. So you're adding these these levels and layers to your learning because you're interested, but they are generally accepted. At some point, like maybe let's say 5-6 years ago, the idea of getting your level 1 educator through Google was sort of kind of nuancy and neat and sort of a niche thing, but it has now become, and not because I think any reason for anything that Google has done per se, but I think it's by capacity people are saying this is important training.
Well, and boards are going Google, and teachers are being forced to learn it. And so if I'm going to learn it, why not go through that process and get it, right? Instead of just like, I figured it out on my own. I haven't actually done the qualification, but I can see why one might. Yeah,
and I don't know if you necessarily have, because you can be as skilled and ninja at it and not bother with any of those badges. But there's an interesting thing happening here, that if it's the elephant in the room, there's a parallel conversation that I think should happen, or maybe it's happening in some areas at secondary school level, where what if a student got their sort of Google certification, would you give a grade 11 programming credit for it? Something like that, a digital media, is there any space in the same conversation that if teachers are accrediting themselves on their own and there's seen as valued by the board, let's say, is there space also then to talk about students getting accreditation on their own? And for instance, a student that completes their lifeguarding swimming certification, could a student get a grade 9 phys ed credit for that? So these alternative accreditation models, which I think are very much on the table right now, but I don't know if anybody's really talking about it.
I say micro, but actually probably on a macro scale. The way students, but people everywhere are learning is becoming much more open source.
Yes.
Right. So I changed my toilet the other day, and if I was changing my toilet 10 years ago, I would call my friend who's done it before. I would call my friend who's a plumber. I would call a plumber. But maybe I would do it myself, and I would get someone who knows how to do it, who I know in my circle, like an accredited type person, like a plumber or some handyman, and then I would take that information and I would go and do it. Well, now I'm putting in change toilet into YouTube. I'm watching that, and I did it, and it was fine. More than fine. It was excellent. Toilets are surprisingly easy, almost concerningly easy, actually.
I know. Yeah. For what? For the dark side.
Yeah. Is it really just a piece of wax? Anyway, whatever. So.
And I've done that. I've done that for a few things that people have sort of said, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've ceiling fan in the bathroom, the toilet. I've built,
everything in my car, everything."
Yeah.
I have no knowledge of my car at all. It taught me how to change an oil. It taught me how to do all sorts of stuff in my car. Like, why not? Like, why not open source this thing? And it's working, and these people seem to know what they're doing. And you know, I get it. There's a little bit of risk because you're not dealing with an accreditation that's necessarily talking to each other. Like you said, if you get your NLS and I want a gym credit for it, well, NLS and the Ministry of Education, or National Life Saving, right? And Ministry of Education, they're not talking to each other.
No.
So you and I can agree on a superficial level. They're both physical. You know, probably by you doing your NLS, you're meeting most of the expectations in a certain level of phys ed credit. But no one's gone through and checked those boxes, and that's where the fear is going to come.
Well, and I think this is kind of where my brain exists. My brain exists in there. It's like, what will education look like? Because that type of change is quick. It can be surprising to some. It can be completely mystifying. Like, how could they ever do? You know, why would I give up my binders just to put things in Word? You know, like, it's that sort of like paradigm shift kind of cold water down your back moment. Like, how did this ever happen? I still have 10 years left in my career, and now I have to deal with this whole sort of like big flip. I exist in that space, and I don't know if it's by choice. I think it's just because my brain reaches out to there. But I ask myself the question daily, you know, what else do I need to do right now to prepare for that possibility? And it's not to trim anything that I'm currently doing. It's the preparing for when that happens.
Well, if you look historically, like, education is sacred, right? Like, if you look back, like, look all the way back, it's this odd sort of sacred cow, where sort of a long time ago, you know, there was only a certain handful of people who were, say, literate or able to go to, you know, Jesuit schools or whatever. And then, you know, it became more public as the Industrial Revolution came along. But even in that environment, there was a teacher, there was a professor, there was somebody who was accredited, who was standing on top of their soapbox, and they had it and you didn't, and they were giving it to you. And now that's starting to break down, where there's a very significant number of teachers who are starting to say, well, no, I'm not a sage on the stage, I'm a guide on the side. And you know, whether that's happening 100% or not, it's certainly, that shift is beginning, and that power is taking away. And there's definitely that pushback from the profession. There are those who are okay with that, there are those who are not okay with that. And what you're suggesting makes a ton of sense. You're opening up, you've got this huge jar of information, like through YouTube and through Twitter and through podcasts and through all these things. But if you're going to open that up, well, then you're taking it away from a lot of people, or at least they're going to feel like you're taking it away from a lot of people. And I think that might be one of the big stumbling blocks there.
Well, this is the cold water, I think, right?
Yeah.
This is definitely the cold water. I was connecting with a former superintendent of our board. I posted out just a question, and she reached back and sent me some stuff. And I'm looking at education documents going back through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and the flip in the late 80s into pretty much what our current look at education looks like. And I'm still focusing at secondary, and I'm looking at, how the credit, it was 27 credits, 33 credits, you could fast track, all this kind of stuff. And it's funny because you go all the way back to part of one of the documents the superintendent sent me, and back in the 60s, there was the exact moment in time that we're having now, that the row and row learning, the sort of, as you said, that sage on the stage, they needed, and it was very much of the 60s, we need to open this up, we need to go where the kids are interested, we need to sort of create not only interesting learning opportunities, but interesting learning opportunities that put upward pressure on industry. And I think what we didn't have then that we do now is the open access. So that was an Ontario phenomenon that they were suggesting in the 60s about education. Now what we have is that this conversation that you and I are having right now is not private. And the moment that we sort of think about or forget of the power of what you and I are talking about right now it's a fundamentally flawed kind of mindset. I think we have to expect that someone's going to hear what we're talking about and use it, well, let's say for good or for something interesting. But that didn't exist back in the 60s. You could have these planning things and people are like, yeah, this is really cool, and nothing would go of it because it's right. one province, one silo. I got to tell you, I'm preparing for like this sort of like this big paradigm shift where all of a sudden, I think post-secondaries are going to say, well, what if six university-bound credits is we don't, that's not all we need, I think, to go to university. And we see, you know, the shifting accreditation. Like I feel the weight of change coming down the pipe, and I'm wondering, I'm fascinated.
Yeah, like, it kind of, I suspect it'll have to, like, 'cause change is inevitable, right? There's no avoiding change, and it won't necessarily go down that road, but something will happen. And it's this funny thing with the internet, in that it's everywhere at this point, but I don't know that it's really being harnessed like it can. And when it does, it'll be different. And I'm intrigued. I think this the way you get your information is going to be a big piece, and I don't think that YouTube example is light. Like most of my students, a lot of my students, especially sort of grade 7 and 8 and above, and I taught for a long time. I taught students with dyslexia, almost exclusively, and almost all of them were doing a lot of their learning through YouTube, right? Like this video content is so powerful. Right. Especially if text is hard for you to access.
Yeah.
And that's the big piece of the internet. Yes, there's tons of text, there's tons of blogs, there's tons of this and that, but there's more video and more audio than ever before. Right? We were always going to the encyclopedia, we were always going to the library, and you might have a book on tape, maybe. But like the amount of information that can be accessed in a non-text way is amazing. And I think that's going to change things a lot.
I asked just before I left my previous when I was at my former school, I was teaching, and I still do. I was teaching the careers course, and the careers course is wonderful, right? Like you can some of the best conversations in any class, hands down, came from me asking the students, and usually I would do this on the front end of the course. I would ask them if their career choice is future-proof. And there's just, like, you start with silence, and then you slowly get to, well, what does that even mean? And then you sort of flow. A lot of times where it ended up was them sort of looking at me and like, hey, yeah, teaching's not future-proof either. And I'm like, this isn't a fight. This is me in the same situation as you, as in, let's talk about this. What understandings do we have to sort of keep ourselves on track for work that we want, and what kind of skills do we need to develop, and are we doing it? You know, I had a lot of kids convinced that, because I said, let's talk about some careers that are future proof. We came up with professional hugger, potato chip tester or taster. I said because testing.
You can't improve potato chips. Is that the issue there?
Yeah,
it's unbeatable.
Yeah, okay. And animal psychologist. And
why animal psychologist?
I don't know. I guess people are. I guess the built-in assumption, could be a flaw, is that everyone's going to have pets and they're going to all have traumatic things they have to work through.
Are there animal psychologists?
Yeah. Now, see, this is what I love. This is why I love this exact moment, because when you have technology in the class, and I assume you have technology in front of you right now, that's not just us recording. Because so many times when I said, you know, the kids would come to professional hugger, and I always made sure that I got that one in there somehow. Just, you know, you load the dice just a little bit so that there's good combo. Inevitably, I would hear from the back of the room, yo, you could get paid $75 an hour to be a professional hugger. And then you sort of go from there. Like it actually is a real designation. It is a
multidisciplinary field designed to study the behaviors and cognitive processes of non-human animals.
So,
I think.
So, yeah, no. Dude, you had flow on that. That was awesome. So I just part of that being future-proof.
$90,000 annually.
So you're finding these things.
Yeah, there you go.
The internet's an amazing thing. So putting that idea of future-proofness out there, I usually would cap it, and I would ask them questions about, you know, do you think that your children or your grandchildren will be in school like you are right now? And again, sometimes you just hear the crickets, but then every once in a while a kid would like, no, they're only going to come in the afternoon, or no, we're going to learn everything online. And I think these are critical conversations to have. I think the fundamental problem with when we, in talking about the future, is that I think teachers are actually more willing to go there than the students. When all things said and done, some of the kids, like I said to one of the kids, it was actually talking about the hospitality. I said, what about if the hospitality course, so we do the numbers. So you're in hospitality course 5 times a week, 1 period a day. So you're doing, let's say 5 hours. It's a little bit more than that, 75 minutes a period, but let's say 5 hours a week. Do you think that you could do a 5-hour shift on a Friday night at a restaurant? And some of the kids in the beginning were like, well, no, I don't know how to work in a restaurant. But by mid-semester, they're like, yeah, I think you've taught me enough. I said, so why couldn't you do a Friday night shift at a restaurant instead of being in a classroom with me? And then the real interesting thing happens, like, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my time?
Right.
And I say, well, have you heard of Genius Hour? Or so this is the sort of like how I see the future kind of invading our lives. But I don't know if we're connecting dots. I don't know. And it all started with podcasting. No, but it's
no, it's certainly interesting, right? It's certainly worth thinking about, and what elements, would, like, say you're a classroom teacher today, like what elements of that might fit. I had two interesting podcasts pretty close back to back when I first started. So Mark Weston, maybe you follow him online. He's pretty prolific, and he's Shift Paradigm is his handle. So that Shift Paradigm, and he talks about the paradigm shift in education, and he brought this really interesting analogy we worked through together, where he was saying, like, if you take a bike, and you spend all your effort and all your time trying to make this bike as fast as possible, and you shave off the ounces, and you really work hard to make this the best bike ever, and you've worked whatever X amount of hard on that. Why would you do that when you could build a car and your bad car will get there twice as fast as your awesome bike? And that was kind of his thing on the Shift Paradigm. Like, why are we trying to fix this, his opinion, this system that's broken, when maybe we just need to shift the system?
Yeah, I would agree with him. I think that I don't look at, and I think this is what makes a paradigm, right? It's the
right. Can I throw a butt in though? But
go.
After that, I had a second conversation with somebody that was Shelley, whose last name I forget. Oh goodness, I'll have to look it up. And she was saying, what about the small everyday wins? Like, why are we trying to turn everything upside down on its head? That's challenging, that's really difficult, that's hard to imagine. Can't we work towards that with thinking on the everyday wins and the everyday things that we can do? So like they're not conflicting. These people both are pushing similar things, but just the mentality is a bit tough. Like, I'm just thinking about someone listening to us talking about these sort of grandiose changes, but then also maybe take a step back and say, well, what sort of elements of that could I lay in today? Like, how could I bring, a video or YouTube or podcasting into my class, maybe now in a smaller element? I don't necessarily need to, like, cancel my class and send kids to a restaurant for 5 hours. Maybe there's a spot in between.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think there is. And I think part of the key there is co-op. There's experiential learning. Like, there's buffers that are already in existence within our schools that sort of are providing this out of school experience. I think the interplay between, or the distance between that, leaving school to get work experience and connect it to curriculum creates a very short walk to, well, why do we still need to be coming back to the school then? And it's not why as in we shouldn't, it's why as in what should we be doing differently. And I think when we start to have those conversations, that's what we're seeing happen right now, that we're doing school differently, whether it's introducing video, streamed video instead of the DVD library that you've had on your shelf, or instead of asking all the kids to take out their pens and pencils and take notes from the overhead, you're putting up the LCD projector and you're doing a common collaborative note in Google, a Google document, and then you're sort of getting through setting up basically doing some of the legwork in a different way so that you can find space to do things differently. So I agree that sort of to get too high up in there, like cataclysmic, like, oh my God, I heard Clough say they're getting rid of the 30 credit thing. No, that's not what I'm suggesting. But I think it's that exact, let's say, cataclysmic thinking that kind of keeps us from advocating for interesting changes to the system. Because I don't think it's a dump your binders, burn your binders, and sort of flip to digital. I mean, even my teaching right now, if you were to watch me in my classroom, I use the whiteboard, I use computers, I have a tablet, I have my laptop, I have like chart paper on the desks. A lot of where I end up landing for me, though, is kind of capturing and curating it and hanging it in Google Classroom for the kids. Because I basically then have to wipe down all my white erase boards, and I want to put away the paper, and I want to sort of start clean slate. Plus, within my classroom, I could have one kid doing math, one kid doing English, one kid doing science. So I don't have that common lesson frame to say, okay, let's all just exist in the same space. So yeah, I'm not trying to throw everything out, but I'm in keeping everything on the table. I'm asking a lot of whys.
That's excellent. All right, so I got to go in a few minutes here. I got a couple things I have to do. So anything else we need to hash out here before we call it a day?
No, you know what? This was awesome. This was really awesome. And like I said, I'm going to share that song with you. I'll send you the MP3, awesome. Or you can. I think last time maybe I'll put it. No, I'll just send you the MP3, so you can sort of decide you want to play it. But I'll definitely use it for the lead-in on this. And
all right, cool.
I really enjoyed talking with you, man. Thanks for letting me come and play.
You too. Thanks for the chat.